Today I am here with an interesting and very iconic musical instrument. Now in its current state, it really doesn't look like much, does it? It could be just a box or a carrying case. It is a carrying case, in fact, but it could be for something really boring like a tape recorder or a suitcase. But actually it's a very interesting and a very cool musical instrument. Now essentially what is inside of this carrying case is the bass half of a Fender Rhodes. And I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the Fender Rhodes. It's the electric amplified piano that Fender came out with during the 60s and 70s that had a beautiful bell-like tone and a growly bass, and it was used on many famous records. One of the most famous that I can think of is Riders on the Storm by the band The Doors. Now, like I said, this is the bass half of the Fender Rhodes, and that's exactly what it is. It doesn't have the rest of the keys, it only is the bass end, and it goes down to the low E on a standard piano. And so I'm going to open up this top and show you what the actual piano bass looks like, play it a little bit, and then also show you the inside because it's pretty wild, especially when compared to a modern keyboard. So let me open up this lid here. There are 4 latches that I really like the design on. If you just take the top, push it down, and then lift up, it is unlocked. And it's a really nice design, and I don't know why other instrument companies haven't used that. Maybe Fender copyrighted it, patented it, or something. Then you lift it up. There's a handle up on top that is used as a carrying handle as well as a handle used for lifting the lid. And then it comes off. There's these like half hinges there that will lift out. And then I'm going to put this down here on the floor. And now you can see the piano bass itself. Now as you can see, we have a piano bass logo here with a beautiful, elegant script. I love the font that they used on these. They used that same font on the the full-size Rhodes, the 88, the 73, etc. And there's also another cool logo here that says Fender Rhodes, makers of fine keyboard instruments. I also like the design on that logo too with the slanted Fender font and all that. It's really cool. Now an interesting note about this logo is it actually can help date the era of an instrument. Because during the 70s, Fender used this style, which was the Fender Rhodes logo. However, in 1975, they actually changed it and omitted the Fender logo from the design, and they simply said Rhodes, makers of fine keyboard instruments. This keyboard was made in 1972, and that's why it has the Fender Rhodes logo. I have a 1975 73 key Rhodes, and it only has the Rhodes logo, and it doesn't have the Fender logo, even though mine was only made a few months after the switch, the logo switch. Many people say that shortly after the logo switch, the pianos remained exactly the same, but 1972 and 1971 era Fender Rhodes are really hard to find. Now we have 2 knobs over here. This one here is volume, and as you can imagine, it does volume. 10 is max, 1 is minimum, and then this here is tone as well. 10 is as much bass as you can get out of it, and then if you turn it all the way down to 1 is the thinnest sound that you can get out of the instrument. Let me turn that back up to 10 because that's where I like to run it usually. And then there's also an input jack where you can insert the jack to run out to the amp and actually get this thing to make sound. Now an interesting note about the instrument is it's actually a passive instrument, much like a guitar. When you take a guitar and plug it into the amp, then the pickups are working and you can play music with it and it's going to be amplified. And this runs the exact same way. It's a completely passive instrument. It's not like the keyboard behind me where if you plug it into the amp, it's not going to run. You need a power supply for it. This does not need a power supply. It gets all its power it needs through the input jack, which is pretty wild. One final note about it before I actually play the instrument is the tops as well as the fronts of the keys are actually, they have a slight arc to them and they're actually kind of rounded. It might not be coming through on camera, but you can actually see that and you can really feel it when you play, that the tops as well as the fronts of the keys, they kind of have an arch to them. And I've never seen that on any other keyboard instrument. Usually on keyboards as well as my 73 key Rhodes, the keys are flat on top like on a piano, but for some reason on this, I don't know if it's a special version, if they did this during this time on only the piano basses or what, but the tops and the fronts of the keys have an arch to them. So it's kind of unusual. So let me plug in this thing and then I will play a little bit on it and give you a demonstration of what it sounds like, and I hope you enjoy. So now I have it plugged in, and to start with, I'm going to play the first few bars of a very iconic bass line from a very iconic song, again, Riders on the Storm by The Doors. As you can see, it's a very simple bass line, but it's also a very powerful bass line, and it's a really, really cool song to play on this instrument. Now, the Doors used the piano bass in many of their records, but however, in the studio recording of the music, including Riders on the Storm, as well as some of their other music like Light My Fire, in the studio recording of the song, you won't hear the piano bass. Instead, you will hear an actual bass guitar. But during live performances, if you go online and watch live performance videos of Light My Fire, you will see the keyboardist Ray Manzerak with a piano bass sitting on top of, depending on what organ he decided to play. Sometimes he used a Vox Continental organ, a combo organ. Other times he used a Gibson combo organ, but he would have the piano bass sitting on top of it, have his left hand playing the bass line, and then do melodies and solo stuff on the organ. And it's a very cool way to use this instrument. The band, The Doors, actually lacked a bass player in the band, so when they were out performing live, they would use a piano bass in replacement for a bass player, and it actually worked very, very well. If you listen to the sound of the instrument when it's played quietly, particularly, it actually kind of sounds a little bit like a stand-up bass or even a bass guitar. And then if you play the notes louder, they get that really cool growl, that more aggressive sound, and it's very, very cool. At the top end, you can even do chords with it. And so that's kind of something else neat that you can do with it. I think the sound is a little bit muddy and it doesn't work great, but you can do chords on it, which is pretty cool. I usually use it for simply doing bass lines, and it's a lot of fun to do. And it's a really, really cool instrument, and I love playing it, and hopefully you're enjoying seeing this, and it's very, very cool. Now, one cool thing about the Fender Rhodes as well as the piano bass is you can actually take the top off and work on the inside and just even look at it if you don't know how to work on it. And taking off the top is very simple. You just do this. It lifts right off. The full-size Rhodes works the exact same way, and now you can see the inside of the instrument, and it's absolutely wild. As you can see, it's actually an acoustic amplified instrument. Like I said, there are pickups that are actually back here. If you look there, you can see all of the little copper little parts there, and those are in fact the pickups, and there's one for each note. And you can see that when I move some keys here, there's actual moving parts, there's actual vibrating tines, and it's actually an acoustic amplified instrument. Unlike a modern keyboard, which has digital sensors that pick up when a hammer hits a sensor, this actually has acoustic amplified tines, which I think is really, really cool. There's even dampers there, and it's basically a simplified piano action. You have the key lifts up on the back of the hammer, and then that lifts up, strikes the string, and also at the same time, it pulls down on the damper, which lifts it away from the tine. So basically, you have the tine that's down there that operates the hammer hits the tine and it makes a sound, but on top here is actually like a harmonic bar that adds sustain and also adds some extra detail to the sound as well. And another thing that's kind of neat about it is if you remove these 4 screws here, there's 2 on one side and there's 2 on the other, you can actually lift up the frame and be able to see the hammer mechanism as well as the dampers and easily do some work on it. And this whole frame piece is known as the harp. Kind of like the metal frame in a piano is also known as the harp. Some people call it the frame, but it can be called the harp. One final thing I wanted to mention about the inside of the piano bass is that some of these tines, the top ones are known as tone bars, they can actually go bad. And as you can see here, we have, I think it's like 4 or 5 of them that are actually bad. You can see how it's gray here, whereas this one here is a normal metal color. This one is gray, that one is gray, this one, that one, as well as that one. Now, that can actually affect the sound of it, and you can totally replace them. As you can see, they're numbered, and so you can order new ones online and replace them, and they have the numbers so that you can just take out the screws, uninstall it, and then put the new one back in. And it's actually quite simple, and when I get around to doing that, I will make a video on it so that you guys will know how to do it. Another thing I wanted to mention about the inside of this instrument is we have some badges here. This one here mentions that this is the, it just has a sticker talking that it was made in Fullerton, California. This one here is the model bass. It does not come with an amp, so that's why there's nothing there on the amp, and there is the serial number for it as well. Now up on top here, we have another stamp that tells the date of when the instrument is made. And as you can see, this one is made on the 11th month of 1972, which is one of the best years for Fender Rhodes as well as the piano basses. And also that is why the Fender Rhodes logo is there rather than the Rhodes logo that I was telling you about. One final thing I want to mention about the inside is if you look at the keys on the inside of the instrument, you can actually see the used bushings very much like a piano key, and in fact these keys really are piano keys. The back end of them is a bit different than a normal piano key, but they actually are piano keys. The bushings work the exact same way, and you can do the exact same work to the bushings that you can on a piano key's bushings. Another cool thing about the inside, I'm just remembering all these neat things, is the pickups and everything are actually completely adjustable. You can take the pickups, loosen this little screw here, and then slide them back and forth closer and farther away from the tine. So if a note is particularly quiet or particularly loud, you can simply move the pickup back to make it quieter and closer to make it louder, and that is a very easy way to voice the keys, because as you can see, there are actually rubber hammers. Earlier models, very early models, had felt hammers, but Fender realized that rubber hammers work just as good, if not better, and so this way here, you cannot really voice the hammers like you can on a piano, but like I said, you can move the pickups around to make the keys louder and softer. Also, this little screw here is used for, it's not a screw, it's a spring, but this little spring here is used for tuning, and you can slide it up and down on the tine to make various pitches, and I've heard you can even get like 4 or 5 different notes out of one single tine by moving that screw up and down. So if you wanted to make your Fender Rhodes become microtonal, you could if you really wanted to. So that is what the inside of a Fender Rhodes looks like, and this is the piano bass. As I said, it's not the full Fender Rhodes, just the bass half of it. And hopefully you guys enjoyed it. It's a very interesting instrument, and like I said, it's very famous. It was used in lots of records, and the Doors love to use it, and it's a really, really cool instrument, and I love to use it as well. I have a loop down here that I've been playing around with just a little bit, and if you listen to it, I actually combined the Fender Rhodes with a wacky sound on the Korg SV1, which I have behind me. It's a really wonderful keyboard to get this fun bass line. That is a weird sound on the SV1 comboed with the Fender Rhodes, so it goes so like actually down here. That was a bass line that I used, and then I combined it with the sound on the SV1 to get that really interesting sound. So I'm going to put this cover back on, and as you notice, this is the glittery cover design. Fender also had a different version that was a matte black finish, but this one is the glittery version, and it's actually really cool looking. I really like how it looks. Apparently they even made the full-size Rhodes with the glittery top. I really would have loved to see that, because I think the glittery top looks super, super cool. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video on the Fender piano bass. It's a really fun instrument. It's fun to play. It's fun to hear. I love the sound of it. It's really cool, and hopefully you've enjoyed it. Now, if you want, you can go check out my channel. I have a video on my personal 1975 73-key Rhodes stage piano that's a fun video. I take it apart, show you the inside, show you how it all works, and I also play a bit of music on it. I even play Bach on a Fender Rhodes, which is pretty unusual. But it actually works pretty well, and if you're interested in going and checking that out and you haven't seen it already, you can go check out my channel, check out that video. I've also got videos on pianos and organs and all kinds of other cool instruments. So if that sounds cool to you, you might want to think about subscribing, and if you do that, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.